everybody has at least one movie from a director that they hate, that they like. For example, I like Michael Bay's The Island, and I pretty much hate everything he's done, with the exception of The Rock. The Rock was pretty damn good. And it had Tony Tranny Todd in it.
Oh, yeah?
So that's a thing.
Was he a tranny in it?
He gets blown up by a missile by Nick Cage. So,
right.
so that's cool.
Kind of have to see it now.
The old missile to the gut syndrome.
Yeah.
And it's got Ed Harris as the bad. Okay, so maybe I got two Michael Bay movies I like. Sue Me, Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris,
Yeah.
Tony Todd getting hit in his tranny junk by a fucking missile.
Missile?
I'm there, baby. Anyway, we're going to talk
Not about The Rock.
we're going to talk about the one movie that I think generally people agree is Paul W.S. Anderson's only good movie. And some people will say.
Yeah.
And that's Event Horizon. Hit that music!
Movies, music, story times, all kinds of shit for you. Everything goes if it's houseing out from Corpulent.
So we're going to talk about The Rock today, I hear.
Yep. Lots of trannies and Tony Todd. You don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Nope.
Check out our video on Tony Todd and his trannies, which is actually not about Tony Todd and his trannies.
It's about
us
Scooby-Doo.
casting Scooby-Doo. It's in there. Check it out. But anyway, we are not talking about trannies and or Tony Todd, though we should again. We're talking about Event Horizon, a horror movie, space horror movie, sci-fi horror movie, back from, what is it, 97, I
I think so. Late 90s.
Yeah, this is a movie that I, perchance, happened to catch in the theater. One, because I'm a big horror nut. Two, because there was a vibe to it that screamed like Alien. And then, of course, we had Sam Neill in it, which at the time,
I like Sam
to
Neill
a young
now,
me,
yeah.
was... He's in the Mouth of Madness.
Look, he could be in garbage the rest of his life. He was in the Mouth of Madness, and
Yep.
he was in this.
And Jurassic
Screw
Park.
Jurassic Park. Well, I haven't seen it yet, but for me, screw Jurassic Park
Yeah,
because he's in these two flicks.
Sam Neill is a beloved actor. So I perchance happened to catch this in the theater, and boy, am I fucking glad I did. I went on to buy the VHS 2 times because I wasted it out. This was one of my favorite movies as a kid, as a teenager.
I've never seen it.
And, really? Wow. And I bought the DVD when they released it, saying that it was a director's cut. It was not. It
Nope.
had like 1 minute extra, and it was unnecessary. And,
Freaking, what's his name? Morpheus farting or something?
yeah,
In his
best
spacesuit?
scene ever. And I wouldn't watch the movie for a while after that, oddly enough, and which is probably why you didn't see it.
Yeah.
But I eventually caught the movie again while I was locked up, and in fact prompted them to leave it on there because they were going to change it. And I said, no, check this movie out. It's cool. And yeah, the response was favorable. Everybody was like, damn, that was cool.
So it's
it's
inmate
cool.
approved?
Inmate approved, Event Horizon. So if you don't know what Event Horizon's about, go check it out and watch it, damn it. It's on Hulu right now, unless you're watching this later, in which case it's not. But basically, it brings the conundrum of the limits of man as applied by a possible God, basically. What if we transcended beyond the limits applied to man is the question this thing raises. And the idea is simple. They present it in a very simple way. A doctor, played by Sam Neill, Dr. Weir, creates an engine that can basically create a mini black hole, bend space and time, and enable quick space travel from point A to
So
point
you
B.
take this point and you drive a pencil, right? I was going to do the whole scene. I forgot how it went.
Yep, that's good. And we needed a Playboy centerfold anyway.
Yeah,
But
that's a good point. I only have Playgirls.
Playgirls, and it's the Shawn Michaels edition.
Oh, it is.
But yeah, man, the ship that he created with this gravity drive eventually is lost. And 7 years later, it reappears. And a rescue mission is sent out to find out what happened to the Event Horizon. And the doctor goes with the crew. And in that sense, we do get that alien feel, that alien buildup.
Yeah.
Only that this is not aliens we're dealing with. This is something from beyond conception. This is something where we find out that the Event Horizon, spoilers, has gone beyond the limits applied to man. To where is this? I mean, you could argue that it's hell. You could argue that it's some alternate dimension that we think of as hell. Whatever it is pretty terrifying. In essence, the ship is possessed by the beings from this dimension, and they are intent on bringing more crew members.
Send more paramedics.
Yeah, basically. So anyway, if you're familiar with horror fiction, especially weird fiction, you can see the heavy influence of Lovecraft in this movie, which is really cool. I'm a big Lovecraft fan, as are you, and it's just always fun when somebody does Lovecraft or something Lovecraftian
in a different way.
In a different way, yeah, it's really neat. He's one of those writers where you're okay with people expanding on his themes and you know, I mean, that's why we know about him, because so many people just riffed on his work, and this is one of those riffs. And you know what? It's surprisingly restrained movie for Paul Anderson. He usually goes with the let's blow him up and here's my hot wife approach. There's
only a couple scenes with it where you could argue it goes into that, but it makes sense. It's never like pointless.
Yeah, he really does well in building up the suspense, building up the characters, which is a big problem with Anderson movies. His characters are just there to look cool and or get killed. Here in Event Horizon, you get a feeling for each of these characters in the crew. And the thing is, his original director's cut had more of the character buildup, so that the suspense of what happens when the ship begins to, you know, attack their fears has more of an impact than it does in the original cut. That being said, in the original cut, it still works. Despite some of the characters being a bit emaciated, you know, the core ones are still
that's the thing. There is a couple where you're like, well, they're kind of pointless, but the ones that matter are intact mostly.
Yeah. So anybody that ever had that criticism, keep in mind that the characters that are a bit thinner than your core ones that are focused on, they actually had storylines, and it all worked in tune with this idea of the ship preying on them. Which we know that it's kind of a standard of Hell movies, you know, like we saw it in As Above, So Below, where Hell preys on their fears. But it really works, and the setting here helps it stand out as unique.
And it's kind of interesting, because I don't know if it's just the product of this cut, but you don't really get, at least for me, that it was the first time seeing it, you don't really get what it is until they kind of make it very obvious.
Right.
The bit where, you know, the little fire guys coming after Morpheus, I was like, oh, that's what it is. But it has that kind of like, you're kind of just still trying to piece shit together, and then it becomes very clear, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Again, I don't know if that's just in this cut or if it was always meant to be that way, or if it was just me, but I like that about it.
I don't know. I mean, I remember always thinking that, so I don't really know, but I don't know exactly precisely my initial response, like, to the letter, but I remember being aware of that, so I don't know, maybe you were just...
I had no idea about anything.
I have no time machine to remember, but the point is, in the end...
I mean, they do kind of lay it out there in the beginning, but it doesn't become super clear until a certain point.
Yeah, and then really, that's,
and even then, you still kind of like don't know what it is.
That's a testament to,
you know, concretely
the film's restraint. Though you do see things happen, it's still keeping this thing at bay.
Yeah,
and it works off people's skepticism of certain things. It really does, because, you know, first of all, the crew themselves are skeptical of what this thing can do, the Event Horizon, or the gravity drive, really. And the imagery alone, by the way, is hellish enough. But then we do get a lot of audio clues, especially when they find the log, the ship's log, and we see those glimpses, and then they slowly begin to translate what is being uttered there, and you know, it becomes increasingly obvious. So even if you are aware of what it is,
like
the way they pace it out really works to keep the mood and the atmosphere, you know, frothing at the end.
And I think it was intentional, because there is some seemingly random scenes, especially with Sam Neill and his wife, that you don't really know what they are until later.
Yeah, until the attacks on the people are concrete.
So I wasn't saying that as negative. I think it's actually good. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. It really does drum up the atmosphere. Either way, if you're aware of it or if you're not, you feel that, you know,
you want to know
thick,
more,
heavy atmosphere. But I gotta say, the actors in this, I know you didn't like one of them, but I really like the crew in this, especially, of course, most notably Sam Neill and Lawrence Fishburne, who plays the ship's captain, the rescue ship's captain, not the Event Horizon's captain. These guys are great, and they work incredibly well with each other. Off of each other, they play off of each other very well. Sean Pertwee as a character named DJ, is another favorite. He's one of the ones whose background story to his fears got pared down, but he's still very much in the film. He does contribute a lot to it. And he has some great scenes with Lawrence Fishburne, especially when they're just reminiscing and talking right before, or right after the translation of the captain's log. But yeah, man, there's a really good set of actors, and even the ones that are not 100% capable, not the next stars on Hollywood Walk of Fame, they're still very capable in this movie to the degree that they're in it. So I liked them all. They were pretty cool. I even liked the black guy. That sounds fucked up, but in this cut of the movie, the one available to us, he's basically reduced to the one-liner guy.
Yeah.
And it's sad because there was a lot more substance to him. And usually I don't like the one-liner guy. It just so happens in this one he's the black guy. That's why I said that. But anyway, I even like that, because
fine.
It worked despite being pared down to what he was. But anyway, anybody you didn't like in this
that guy? I don't remember his name, but the guy that goes into the little portal at first.
Yeah, there's a younger. He's seen as they call him Baby Bear. He's seen as the novice, the one they all coddle and then take to in the crew, and you didn't so much dig him apparently.
Yeah, he was very. It was one of those where you the first time I heard him speak, I was like, oh no, he's gonna be a problem. But he's in it so little that it didn't even become a problem. It's just one of those things where like, damn line delivery, Del.
He's one of the first victims, so he's basically catatonic throughout the whole movie.
Pretty much.
So that makes sense. But no, yeah, it's I really find the crew great overall. The characters and the cast playing them, especially those two guys. I think you'll agree with me on that.
My boy.
The effects in this, now you got to keep in mind that this was the late 90s, so the CGI wasn't, fucking spectacular.
Yeah.
But you know what? If you got the right TV and the right settings, the darks are pitch black.
If you don't see it on Hulu.
And, if you see it under the right conditions, HD especially, then it still looks good. And there's nothing in this that's ominously like Anaconda level CGI. There's none of that. Don't get me wrong. There's just some scenes where you're like, oh, well, that's CGI. But it never is jarring or...
Mainly like the space walking scenes aren't super convincing. But nothing bad. You're just like, all right, it's an effect.
Yeah, I think it didn't bother me at all then, and it still doesn't bother me, unless I'm going to be a fucking nitpicker about it, which I'm not. And that's the case. But on top of those effects, we do get a lot of physical effects. They do a lot of that. They do a lot of that too, and where it's practical, i.e., they're not in space, so obviously they're gonna do a little CGI work because it's cheaper than building models.
Or a spaceship,
or going to space, but. In terms of people, they pretty much keep it physical. And you know what? The original cut was a lot more in your face about the gore and the jarring imagery. And I could see in this specific movie why that would be incredibly disturbing to see. But it also kind of works that they kind of made him cut that stuff out, because now you just see glimpses of stuff. And that in itself also has an effectiveness that lends to the atmosphere. So, considering we'll never see that longer cut, the fact that we see more or less flashes of the gore and the disturbing imagery kind of does lend credence to the atmosphere being set here, like I said. But it would have been very interesting to see that, because I think this is one of the few occasions where seeing more at times would have been very, very disturbing, given what we know about what's going on. But anyway, so that's the rub on that. The score in this is pretty neat, I gotta say. I really liked it. It's subtle. It perks up whenever it needs to perk up. I enjoyed it. It's nothing standout. It's nothing spectacular. It's nothing you're gonna go out and buy on fucking CD. Assuming you still do that.
Yeah. I buy 8-tracks mostly, but.
And they all rip.
Yeah.
But that was cool aesthetically speaking, and it's a very dark movie. Again, ideal if you watch it that way, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it makes sense. It's fucking space. There's some hellish shit going on.
Yeah.
So that all in all, the elements the components of what makes a movie just fucking worked here. Everything just worked to contribute to it. And now we've alluded to the director's cut. There is a director's cut, and apparently it is far better than what we get, which we already like. But something happened. The studio, of course, made him cut a lot of the gore and a lot of the disturbing imagery that was inherent in the picture. And on top of that, they made him pare down a couple of the subplots with the crew. So when certain crew members get disposed of, it seems more like a slasher disposure than the substance of the other characters that the other characters had behind them. And that's a real shame, because really the movie was just a 2-hour movie and then a few minutes, which is perfectly acceptable. But they made him cut it down to a 90-minute movie. So it really, really saddened me, because we go and see, now it's like the standard to go see a 2-hour and 30-minute movie.
Some movies do not need to be that long.
Exactly.
Black Panther, Kingsman.
Yes. This is a movie that really would have benefited from that. And case in point, one of its biggest influence, Alien, is a pretty long movie, and it uses that time to build up the atmosphere. And you could see that was there. They do spend a lot of time with these characters and building them. So I really would have loved to see that. Unfortunately, they shipped those fucking old reels, those negatives, to some salt mine where they got destroyed and were basically not salvageable anymore. There was rumors that there was some VHS print of it, but apparently that too is unsalvageable. So the one time that a lot of people wanted Paul Anderson to have a director's cut,
and that was the thing. The movie was a massive flop.
But then it became this huge hit.
It became a hit on DVD, and they wanted him to release the director's cut. But
there was a desire there, folks, from the studio and from the fans.
Yeah.
And boom. This could have been the thing that changed everything for Paul Anderson.
Unless that cut sucked, which I highly doubt.
Yeah, I don't think it did. I think, given the descriptions of the scenes, I think it would have been pretty damn great.
That's why I didn't even bring up the slight problems I had with it. Because knowing that was my issues. Some of the characters are kind of not important.
Yeah, and but this is a great example of a movie that has been compromised by a severe cut, but it's still pretty fucking great. And I think it deserves the cult status it earned. I think it deserves the fame it got on VHS and subsequently other formats. I think it's Paul Anderson's masterpiece. I mean, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece in comparison to other movies, but it is his masterpiece, and it shows you that the guy could do something great besides Resident Evil movies and that Three Musketeer movie that nobody wanted. Woo! That being said, I'm also the guy that doesn't hate Paul W.S. Anderson. I don't hate him, There's room for that silliness. Yeah. I like silly shit like that sometimes. I liked Resident Evil 3. I mean, that's the thing, right? He didn't direct that one, but he produced all of them.
All right.
Wrote all of them, basically. And I'm one of those few guys that likes Alien versus Predator. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's a big, silly movie about fucking aliens fighting each other. It's not part of canon, so it doesn't offend anything there. I liked it. It was fun. That's just me, baby. I'm going to show you that movie one day and see what you think about it. But in the meantime, we like Event Horizon. We think it should be a classic. We shouldn't even be putting it in They Should Be Classics because it kind of already is a cult classic to a lot of people. Yeah. But we're going to deem it a classic, I think. So what's your rating on this little pick?
I liked it. I think it had a very Clive Barkerian feel to it at times.
At times it does, yeah.
That's actually what I liked about it. Or one of the things I liked about it. And watching this, I see what Dead Space was born from.
Yeah.
It's not even like people compared it to Aliens, and I know,
Event
Horizon has
ties.
But this is Dead Space is very much Event Horizon.
Oh, yeah. In fact, remember I told you that when I played it? Because that was one of the few games I played Dead Space. I was like, man, this is fucking Event Horizon.
I'll tell you, as the series goes along, I know people shout on it, but it got more insane. It did get more crazy, but you can kind of see it making sense because of its what it's based on. Event Horizon. It's like, oh, okay, that actually makes sense. Anyway, pretty great movie. I wish we would get that cut, but we never will. So I'll give it a solid 8.5. It's pretty great.
I'm gonna give it an 8, and again, that has to do it's not really the movie's fault. You know, it has to do with the fact that
Yeah.
because of the cut, there are some compromised sequences and characters, but it perseveres despite how it was hobbled, and that says something about the movie. And I think it deserves every accolade it's gotten thus far. I do think it stands out in Paul Anderson's lackluster filmography. And yeah, definitely check this out. It is pretty fucking badass. It is pretty awesome. We are the fat assholes at the end of the rainbow telling you, watch this shit. I'm Ahab. That's Goontick. Hit like, share, subscribe, and notification for more shit from the unfit. We're out.
Movies, music, story times, all kinds of shit for you. Anything goes inside the night from a couple of corpulent Jews. Movies, music, story times, all kinds of shit for you.